Hello and welcome once again to News Today, news without the noise. Before I come to my talking points and the top headlines of the day, I wish to state that tonight I will be making a major personal announcement. So do stay on to listen to that. But first, our big talking point tonight. Our talking point tonight is India's mission to label Pakistan a terror state working or not on the ground. Who really is winning the war of narratives? Also, the return of COVID strains. Should you be worried? We'll be joined by top doctors on that as well. As I said at the outset, I will be making a personal announcement in this show today. But before that, as always, it's time for our top story. And our top story, yet again, is over Operation Sindoor. The military operations have stopped, but the diplomatic operations are now slowly taking over. Remember, in the last few days, India has launched a diplomatic blitz in an attempt to corner Pakistan on the global stage, with several MPs' delegations being sent across the world in an attempt to acknowledge Pakistan's role in promoting terrorism. Prime Minister Modi, on the other hand, is focusing on the domestic audience, making several statements across the country, making it clear Pakistan must give up on terror to have any meaningful ties with India. Multi-party delegations abroad, domestic political outreach at home. How is it all really working out? Is India going to be successful in telling the world that Pakistan is run by a rogue army that sponsors terror? That's going to be our big focus. Take a look first at how the politics and the diplomacy is playing out.
मैं इसलिए कहता हूं अब ये प्रॉक्सी वॉर नहीं कह सकते इसको, क्योंकि जो आतंकवादियों के जनाजे निकले, उस जनाजे को स्टेट ऑनर दिया गया पाकिस्तान में.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been doing some plain speaking. Over the last few days, Prime Minister has sent out some stern messages to Pakistan and, more importantly, the people of that country.
पाकिस्तान को आतंक की बीमारी से मुक्त करने के लिए पाकिस्तान के अवाम को आगे आना होगा, पाकिस्तान के नौजवानों को आगे आना होगा. सुख चैन की जिंदगी जियो, रोटी खाओ, वरना मेरी गोली तो है ही.
In the days after Operation Sindoor, when the world seemed to focus on the brief India-Pakistan conflict, New Delhi is putting the spotlight back on the issue that matters to India: terrorism sponsored by Pakistan. Delegations of MPs from both ruling and opposition parties are crisscrossing the world.
Bringing Pakistan in FATF is very important because our apprehension is that this 2 billion loan which IMF is giving, that will be used by Pakistani military.
There's a very conscious effort today.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has given multiple interviews to European media.
I come to Berlin in the immediate aftermath of India responding to the Pahalgam terror attack. India has zero tolerance for terrorism. India will never give in to nuclear blackmail. And India will deal with Pakistan purely bilaterally.
And Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri is visiting the United States, where he will meet key American officials. Pakistan too is making its moves. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is on a hastily planned 4-nation tour of Turkey, Iran, Azerbaijan and Tajikistan. In Tehran, he called for talks with India.
We are ready to talk for the sake of peace on water issue with a neighbor. We are ready to talk to promote trade and also counter terrorism if they are serious. But if they choose to remain aggressor, then we shall defend our territory and our country.
India's messaging is constant and consistent. There can be no talks with Pakistan till the time they breed terror. New Delhi's mission is to expose Pakistan as a terror state in front of the world, a fact widely known but less acknowledged. Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's raise the big questions right at the very top. India's mission to label Pakistan a terror state, is it working on the ground or not? Do MP delegations really deliver? Are these MP delegations just a photo op and a PR exercise? Who is really winning this war of narratives? Those are the questions I will raise tonight. Joining me now, Ambassador Vivek Kaju, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs. Also joining me, Brahma Chalani, Strategic Affairs expert. We also hope to be joined by Daniel Block, Senior Editor at Foreign Affairs Magazine and Contributing Editor to the Washington Monthly. I appreciate all of you joining us. I want to come to you, Mr. Kaju, first. What's your sense in the last few days, this diplomatic offensive, MPs being sent across the world, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar giving a series of interviews now to foreign channels? Is it working, or do you believe that this should have happened much earlier and therefore it is a bit of a missed opportunity?
No, I do believe it should have happened earlier, but it was important for us at this stage also to tell the world that it is not only important to acknowledge Pakistan as a state which breeds terrorism, which uses terrorism as an instrument of policy, which has made terrorism a part of its strategic doctrine, but that India has no alternative but to respond to Pakistani terror through kinetic means. That the days which stretched over a quarter of a century when India was expected to absorb Pakistani terror are over. And therefore, the real message that we are sending the world is that it must put pressure on Pakistan to abandon the path of terror. It's not an easy a thing to achieve, but we must try that because.
But how is it different but how is it different, Mr. Kaju, from what we've done in the past? You've been a secretary in the government of India. You've looked closely at the AFPAC and the Pakistan desk. What is different in the messaging now compared to the past? And the world didn't listen to us then. Will they listen now?
Look, after 1998, after the tests, it was my experience that the world focused not on Pakistan's initial terrorism as an escalatory measure, but on our response. Today, we are telling the world, and this is something that, if you permit me, I've been writing for a good 10 years, that the original, and these are the terms that I'm happy Vikram Misri used now, that the original escalation between nuclear states lies in a provocative act like a terrorist attack. And if you permit me one more sentence, Rajdeep, throughout the Cold War, the Soviets and the Americans played all kinds of games through their proxies. And these games included the proxies targeting the soldiers, each other's soldiers, in Vietnam, in Afghanistan. But never did these two superpowers, these nuclear powers, play games on each other's territory. The closest it came to a real crisis was in 1962 in Cuba, and what is not so well known in 1987 when NATO launched what was called the Able Archer exercise. Apart from that, they refrained from provocation on each other's territory. Pakistan has turned that nuclear doctrine which developed in Europe and in the United States and the West on its head. And it started using nuclear weapons as a shield. And the world came to us and said, "You are big boys. We will try to do everything we can to get Pakistan off the terror disease. But please, it's too dangerous. It's escalatory, so don't respond kinetically." Now what has happened is we've said that below the nuclear threshold, there is space for kinetic action. And that is why the terminology being used by the government, which the Prime Minister began, was to say we will not succumb to nuclear blackmail, which means we've not developed proxies. We don't have a Lashkar-e-Taiba or a Jaish-e-Mohammed like organization which can undertake terrorism in Pakistan. So what do we? The only thing that we can do is use
Right.
kinetic action, and we will use that. That is the challenge
Okay.
before us, to
Uh,
tell one last sentence, to tell the world that, look, please put pressure on Pakistan, that escalation lies in their terrorism, not in our response.
You heard Professor Brahma Chelani, Vivek Kaju give that rather detailed explanation of how India's diplomatic offensive is moving. But the fact is, do you believe, Professor Chelani, that Pakistan is being cornered by the kind of diplomatic offensive that we've launched? Or do you believe Pakistan will get away with it yet again?
Let me be frank, Rajdeep. India won the battle, but lost the narrative. Indian strikes achieved the objective of imposing costs without triggering an all-out war. India effectively pierced the perceived immunity conferred by Pakistan's nuclear deterrent. By the end of the three-day war, Indian airstrikes had crippled major Pakistani air bases, including Nur Khan and Balari, without suffering any confirmed retaliatory damage. In fact, this three-day conflict exposed the vulnerabilities of the Chinese weapon platforms on which Pakistan relied. But India failed to translate its short-term victory into achieving the larger goal of advancing the overall struggle against a rogue neighbor that exports terrorism. And losing the international narrative holds significance. It signifies failing to influence the broader international perception and understanding of the core issue being Pakistan's cross-border terrorism. That core issue triggered
But
the
what
recent
could India,
military...
Professor, what could India, Brahma, what could India have done that they didn't do? What could India have done that they didn't do, in your view, which now perhaps they are attempting to do with this diplomatic offensive?
The thing is that the core issue has fallen by the wayside. Why did India lose the international narrative? There are two reasons for it. One reason is that successive Indian governments have focused narrowly on shaping the domestic narrative, thereby ceding the international narrative by default. Operation Sindoor is merely the latest example. Sending delegations of MPs abroad was the equivalent of seeking to close the stable door after the horse had bolted. That is, after the global narrative had already hardened. The second reason is that, in keeping with India's bureaucratic culture, India often responds too slowly, allowing others to define the narrative first. India needs to remember that to shape
No,
international
but what is this
opinion,
narrative? Brahma, allow me to challenge. No, but Brahma, allow me to challenge you. The fact is, when you say that we've lost the narrative, how have we lost the narrative? I mean, the world surely knows and acknowledges Pakistan-based cross-border terrorism. This is not something new. It's been going on for 3 decades. Are you telling me that the world needs to wake up now and the narrative has suddenly been lost by India on terrorism?
there is a broad and widely accepted international consensus backed by numerous international reports, intelligence assessments, and historical events that Pakistan has provided support, sanctuary, and training to various terrorist groups. We're talking about Operation Sindoor and how it was portrayed internationally. We have to remember that Pakistan was quick to spread empty boasts and even outright lies, including that it downed 5 Indian warplanes on the first day of the conflict. That claim was picked up and highlighted by the international media because there was no quick Indian rebuttal. We all know that Trump announced a ceasefire ahead of India or Pakistan. But to respond to Trump's boast that he brokered the ceasefire, India took 2 full days. By then, the world had come to believe that the US mediated an end to the military hostilities. And the Indian response to Trump's statement that he used the threat of trade suspension to force India's hand came after 3 days. India has to remember that in public diplomacy, time is of the essence. To shape international opinion,
Let me,
India must act swiftly by issuing timely statements and rebuttals to counter disinformation. The irony is this, Rajdeep, that India framed Operation Sindoor in powerful symbolism as Indian women avenging the murder of 26 husbands. But that powerful symbolism was not backed up by a proactive public diplomacy to shape the international narrative through timely statements and rebuttals. What can delegations of MPs do now when the international narrative has already hardened?
has the international narrative, Daniel Block, hardened? Are you getting a sense that the world already has taken sides, or do you believe that Brahma Chelani is being a little unfair to India, saying we were a little late with telling the world exactly how we were the victims yet again of a terror attack from Pakistan?
I don't know if hardened is the word that I would use, but I do think that much of the world has moved beyond this and are now focusing on other things, which is to say that the conflict and the fighting between India and Pakistan is obviously a huge story in both of those countries. But in Washington, at least, it's not the dominant news item. It slipped not just kind of off the front pages of newspapers, but more or less out of the news altogether. I think it's important to remember that the United States never really wanted to get involved in this conflict, and I think that's true for a lot of other stories as well. A lot of other states as well. To the extent that they did get involved, it was because they were mostly concerned about nuclear escalation. These are two nuclear armed states that are fighting each other. Now, that's not to say that in various corners of Washington, people aren't thinking about this anymore. Of course they are. It's not to say that the US government won't still be more involved in this than it was before. I think they probably will be, largely out of concerns of nuclear escalation. But I do think that we're moving beyond that. And we're less concerned now with questions of who won or who lost, who's the victim and who isn't. I do think there will be continued focus on trying to get Pakistan to support terrorist actors less, with a recognition that the Pakistani government is very complex and often the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. But it's not a huge story anymore here in the United States.
It's not a huge story anymore in the United States. Remember, Shashi Tharoor is leading that delegation to the United States and countries in the Western, in that part of the world. Dr. Tharoor has always been very articulate making his statements, but is it again the question too little, too late? And does it really make that kind of impact? Listen to what Shashi Tharoor said only today when he was in Guyana, when he spoke to the Guyanese leadership there. This is Shashi Tharoor on Pakistan. Listen in.
There was certainly a desire on the part of the terrorists to provoke communal tensions in India between the Hindu and Muslim communities. That failed spectacularly. All communities rallied around in a very united manner. And what was again very effective was that in the briefings that the Indian government and the Indian military gave every day during these 4 days of conflict, two of the military officers doing the briefing were women officers, and one of them was a Muslim, which sent a very clear message to the world or anyone who was watching that this is not about Hindu-Muslim or anything like that. This is about terrorism and terrorist enablers versus democratic India.
Okay, let me go straight with that to you, Vivek Kaju. You're hearing Shashi Tharoor there, articulate as ever, speaking about the fact that this terror attack was designed to stir a Hindu-Muslim divide. Now, do you need a Shashi Tharoor to do that, to go to Guyana, to go to South America, to go to the US to make this point heard loud and clear? Or could our diplomats have done it on their own? What does this say about the state of Indian diplomacy, that we need to send our MPs in these all-party delegations to make these points? Or are these, as the cynics say, mere photo ops?
Look, Rajdeep, I won't get into the politics of this. I've been a diplomat and I'll respond to you in terms of diplomacy. Obviously, there's a political element apart from the diplomatic significance of an all-party delegations going and meeting interlocutors. But I'll take off from what Mr. Block said. Terrorism is no longer an international priority. It is low down in terms of global priorities. The priority today is how to deal with Trump and his erratic policies and the overarching China-US rivalry. What the world is concerned with, and Mr. Block mentioned that, is escalation. Our challenge at the moment is how to ensure that the international strategic community understands that the escalation process between nuclear states begins with a terrorist attack, which is completely unacceptable, as the Pahalgam attack was. That is going to be a long-term process. I wish the government had begun this process many, many years ago. I wish that our strategic community had started writing about it. We fell into the trap, and
No,
our
but it's not
strategic
just that,
community.
Mr. Karju, if I may intervene, look, in 2022, if I'm not mistaken, Pakistan was moved out of the FATF grey list. Should we have protested much more strongly at the IMF? While the IMF loans may not be linked specifically to what a country does when it comes to terror, surely we could have made our voice heard loud and clear. Are you saying these were all missed opportunities? Should we have kept the heat on Pakistan for a much longer period?
No, because we are in a bit of a bind. And the bind is that the international community does not want a nuclear Somalia. Pakistan has over 220 million people. It has nuclear weapons. And the world simply cannot contemplate an unstable Pakistan. Therefore, our task is to ensure that the world puts pressure on Pakistan, and that's a long-term process. And the Pakistan government, as Mr. Block said, is a complex government. But I think if the international community, if the major powers understand what we are saying, as they should, because otherwise we will use kinetic action, and that is something that we made it clear. Now,
Sir,
but
Mr. Karju, I'm just showing images of the Pakistan Prime Minister with the Turkish President Erdogan. We know Pakistan's strong relationship with China. Given all that, when you say the world community will come together, there are countries which are simply unwilling to call Pakistan out because of their close alliances.
Yes, but if countries of the European Union, the major powers, if the United States were to tell the Chinese, the Turks don't matter, quite frankly, Iran doesn't matter in this, Azerbaijan and Tajikistan, these are the four countries Shehbaz Sharif is visiting, they really don't matter. But if the Americans were to have a straight dialogue with China to say that, look, the Indians have lost patience and it's getting too dangerous and you better rein in your allies or your vassals or whatever you may call them, that they can't use terror anymore. My last point, I think I have great respect for Brahma's strategic vision, his knowledge on these affairs, but I think he's, if I may submit for his consideration, 2 points. One, when you are dealing with this erratic personality who, like Donald Trump, and you are engaged in trade discussions with him, you are engaged in matters with him which are vital to your economic interests and other interests, then there will always be a time lag between his statements and a government's response. That is the nature of how governments behave. I've been part of, in my diplomatic career, I have been part of government processes. It's not very easy. You can't, if Trump says something, you can't come back with a snappy one-liner immediately. You've got to think it carefully. And my second point is this: narrative building at the end of the day really is transient. It's of transient value. The real thing we've got to do is to change the strategic thinking in the strategic community of the West and other parts of the globe on escalation. That is the point I'm referring to
Okay.
again and again, because I
You're,
believe that is where
you
the key
made that
lies.
point earlier as well. You made that point and you made that
Yes.
strongly. You know, that's the point, Brahma. A lot of this is happening behind the scenes. You're saying India should have reacted instantly the moment Trump, in a way, tried to claim credit for the ceasefire, almost tried to internationalize Kashmir. In diplomacy, certain things have to be done behind the scenes. Brahma Chelani is the point, I think, that Mr. Karju is making.
Ambassador Kaju makes a fair point. I was giving you examples of India's slow response. For example, the Pakistani claim on the first day of the conflict that it had downed 5 Indian warplanes. Wasn't that picked up by the international media? Wasn't that highlighted? Even today, just 2 days ago, I got a call from the editor of a well-respected international publication about this Pakistani claim. That claim hasn't been dispelled even today. But on the larger issue,
what if the claim is true? What if the claim is true, Brahma? We don't want to get into the claim. Maybe we want to focus focus only on the issue of terror.
Well, the Indian military, in its briefing, has mentioned that all Indian pilots returned home safely. And they have also pointed to Pakistan's record of making exaggerated claims that proved to be false later. But I think I want to come to the fundamental issue. You know, you're mentioning the US. The real outcome from Operation Sindoor is the wake-up call India has got from the US. 2 successive US administrations, first Biden and now Trump, have sent a wake-up call to India that the US is not a reliable strategic partner of India. Biden was the one who initiated the bailout IMF packages for Pakistan, 2, actually, one after another. It is he who modernized and upgraded Pakistan's F-16 fleet against India. It is his administration that took the lead in helping Pakistan exit the FATF gray list. And now Trump has opened India's eyes. He has equated the terror-sponsoring state with the victim India. He has amplified the international focus on the Kashmir issue. Notably, Trump has remained silent on the root cause of the crisis, cross-border terrorism. He hasn't uttered a single word on that root cause of the crisis, while he has sought to portray Kashmir as the central dispute. And in fact, all this aligns with Pakistan's long-standing tactic of using the Kashmir issue as a smokescreen to legitimize its terror operations. I think when history is written, this Operation Sindoor will be seen as fundamentally shifting India's foreign policy toward strategic self-reliance.
You know, I want to bring in Daniel Block on that to get a final word to what you heard from Brahma Chelani just now. It's the United States, in a sense, which has once again, like it or not, because of the way this is played out, hyphenated India and Pakistan. That's what many people fear. Do you believe those fears are justified, or do you believe the US does see India very differently to Pakistan, and maybe Brahma Chelani is exaggerating the impact that this Trumpian worldview will have on the subcontinent?
Well, I think with everything Trump-related, making forward-looking predictions is very difficult. And with that as a caveat, I'll give it my best shot. I think when it comes to Trump and Kashmir, you have a sense here that Trump loves to fashion himself as a great deal maker, as the great negotiator. And so I think there's a sense of personal ego that's probably tied up in his offers, in the past to mediate over Kashmir, or his sense that he could come to some sort of permanent solution over that. I think that that's played up in his own personal ego, and that most elements of the United States government don't think that that's true. When it comes to the question of hyphenating, I think the United States really would like to be closer to India still to deal with the threat from China. I think that that's probably where the US strategic community stands. But I do think that after this, the United States government probably has a sense that it needs to focus again more on the India-Pakistan relationship because again, it's scared of escalation. It's scared of the fact that things might ramp up and that these are two nuclear armed states. And in terms of who it blames or seeing India as the victim and Pakistan as the aggressor, I think that there's absolutely a sense that the Pakistani government is doing a very bad job, to put it mildly, of dealing with terrorism that's emanating from within its borders. But I also think there are elements of the US government and the US foreign policy community more broadly that are worried about some of the hyper-nationalism that's emanating from India. They worry that that's going to prompt more escalation than is necessary, that could become quite dangerous and combustible. So I don't think they see it narrowly as one side is to blame, the other is a clear victim. And I think that that's going to concern them, especially, again, I can't emphasize enough how much escalation is driving US involvement in this, the fear that this conflict could go nuclear.
I think that is the central fact that we've got out of this very educative conversation. The real worry for the world is, will this conflict escalate, and if next, to what level? The real concern for India is, what will the world do to stop Pak-based terror? And the question is, can we do enough to put terror above the fears that the West has over escalation? I thank all my three guests for joining me and giving us a sense of how this diplomatic war is likely to be waged in the months ahead. Thank you all very much for joining me. I want to come from there to my other big talking point today. India has now reported over 1,000 active COVID cases. India reported a rapid spike in new COVID-19 cases just in the last few days, with the spike in infections taking the country's overall caseloads to over 1,000. Kerala, Maharashtra, Delhi were the states that saw the most number of new infections in the last 1 week. The Union Health Secretary reviewed the recent COVID-19 cases, noting most cases are mild and can be managed at home. The Union Health Secretary has urged people to not worry and need not wear, but instead wear masks in crowded places and get tested if they have any symptoms of COVID. So is COVID back again, or is this simply a mild strain? Joining us now are very special guests who were part, remember, of our COVID coverage that we did for a couple of years. Joining me is Dr. Swaminathan. He's the head of infectious diseases at Gleneagles Hospital in Chennai. And joining me here in the studio is an old friend, Dr. Hemant Thakkar, one of Mumbai's leading physicians. I appreciate both of you joining us because I want you all to take the FAQs that we are getting on COVID. Is it back is the big question, and that's what I want to ask. The first big question, Dr. Swaminathan, what is this latest variant of coronavirus, and is it really back, and should we be worried?
The question is not, is it back? The question is, has it ever gone away? The answer is no. It's always been around. It's just that there is a new variant of something where we have had a long list of variants. Just one more new kid on the block. It's slightly immunologically different from the pre-existing strain. So we are seeing a spike in the number of infections. That is to be anticipated. It's now become almost like a seasonal event like the influenza virus. It's still not got to that level. And therefore, it will keep going round and round like one of those lost Sputnik rockets. And it's just something we have to learn to live with. That doesn't mean it's going to create a nightmare scenario or anything that is causing panic. I think what we need to understand is that these kind of problems will happen. We will weather this. It's not going to be a major storm.
Dr. Thakkar, are you getting a lot of cases of people coming with flu with a mild variant of coronavirus? And is it in any way something to worry about, to panic about?
So after Enter the Dragon, we have phase 2, Return of the Dragon. But this dragon has lost its teeth and lost its energy. We're seeing lots of flu-like symptoms where patients come with cough and cold, but it's the extreme fatigue that brings in, is this the new COVID variant? So we are seeing a lot of patients with this, but it's short, and in effect, the patients almost completely recover, except for the ones with chronic diseases.
You know, It's interesting that you're saying that in most cases people recover, because I think what was the worry, Dr. Thakkar, with the previous variants, of course, was the fact that it pushed a lot of people into fatalities. You're saying in this instance it's a mild strain, am I correct?
Absolutely. You must remember that 56% of our population is vaccinated. 70% have had one vaccine. So in addition to the fact that the variant is mild, it's also facing the steely wall of vaccination, and your old vaccination is seen to work immunologically.
That's the next question I want to raise. Immunity from past infections and vaccine enough. If I was vaccinated, took two doses, is that enough, Dr. Swaminathan? Or do you believe that
Absolutely.
whether it is Covishield, is that enough?
Absolutely. See, let's make this very clear. If the Omicron had hit us before the Delta, we would have had as much carnage, if not more. But we learned from Delta, we learned from the vaccine, and we learned from hybrid immunity, so much so that Delta, the Omicron variant, was, an interesting statistical phenomenon, and epidemiologically we learned a lot. But clinically speaking, it didn't really make much of a difference for most people. And I believe the same thing is going to happen with the JN1 variant as well, and all future variants to come, at least for the conceivable future, unless, something new happens. And therefore, our immune system has been educated well enough. And therefore, I think at this point, there is nothing really for us to get too excited about.
The reason, of course, Dr. Swami, that the people are getting excited about is the fact that cases have crossed 1,000. But you're saying it could be like any other influenza, which will come year after year and probably get milder by the year. Am I correct?
Absolutely. See, I have been on your channel for quite a long time, as you've noted in the past as well. And I've had this nasty habit of making predictions. And I stand by my conviction that this is also something that will come to pass. See, please understand that the immunological response to it seems to be pretty robust. And like Dr. Thakkar pointed out very clearly, most people are having a very mild, but yes, uncomfortable illness, no doubt. The concern is going to be primarily of those who are extremely debilitated and whether they will be able to weather the storm. I think we don't have enough data about that, and they need a little bit of monitoring. But for the vast majority of us, this is just going to be something which is a passing cloud, which may give us a little bit of a beating, but not necessarily something that's going to cause us significant damage either in the short or the long run.
But what we are getting, Dr. Thakkar, is a number of cases in recent weeks of people with flu. Now, is that again seasonal? The fact is monsoons are here in Mumbai. Are we, in all the people who are coming to you, are you getting those with clear COVID symptoms, or is it just a regular flu in most instances?
There is so much of overlap between the flu symptoms and the COVID symptoms. This time, because in erstwhile times when our immunities were low, the COVID symptoms had breathlessness, ground glassing, air hunger, saturation drops. So now with this admix of the seasonal flu with the monsoon flu and the resurgence of COVID, it's all an overlap and mixed. But I'm again emphasizing what Dr. Swaminathan also said. We will weather the storm, but that doesn't mean we take it lightly, because this virus has a bark which is bigger than its bite. The numbers are going up, so it is barking all over the place. So do not forget all the restrictions and care that we took. May not be that severely, but you have to mask in public places. Try and be hygienic. And if you do that, you will protect the seniors at home and the immunocompromised who are likely to get scarred even with the mild virus.
No, so are you saying social distancing only for those who develop the symptoms? I mean, should I be wearing a mask now out in the open today?
Like you and me are sitting less than 3 feet away, still we are not wearing masks. I would say if you're in the house or in the office, if you are asymptomatic, you don't need the mask. But if you want to see a film, see it at home. If you want to go to a crowded place, postpone it till the monsoon washes the virus away. Be a little more careful when indulging in public places and allow this seasonal COVID or upsurge in COVID to gently pass away without leaving a big ditch in the dump.
Dr. Swaminathan, more specifically, a question that is asked, how is this NB.1, 0.8.1 different from earlier variants? You mentioned Omicron, Delta. What exactly is this new virus is a question being asked.
See, RNA viruses are inherently very incompetent at replication, and they make lots of errors. In a way, it's a survival advantage which allows them to keep evolving. Flu virus has been doing this for millennia. And that's why we keep getting hit by a flu season every year. And last year's vaccine is not a great fit. And Omicron is also an RNA respiratory virus, which is also having the same problem of poor replicator fidelity. And therefore, these kind of mutations will happen. Remember, millions of mutations happen, but except one, the rest of it is going to fall off because they don't give it any advantage. It has to have a survival advantage in terms of replicability and transmissibility. This one has a little bit of an edge over the pre-existing variant. That's why it's moving forward. But let us not confuse the transmissibility for the capability to produce severe infection or unusual infection. See, that's the cornerstone of the variant of interest and variant of concern distinction that WHO makes. They've called it a variant of interest because it's transmitting faster and causing infection.
And I don't need another vaccine, am I correct?
I don't know if the vaccine is going
to... Do I need it?
I don't know if the vaccine is going to provide a significant game changer in this setting. See, I would probably consider the vaccine for my extremely elderly, vulnerable, like my stem cell transplant and things like that. But even there, I would say it's a caveat saying I may consider it. Mass vaccination at this point is unlikely to change anything. One, the wave is already here. So trying to get a vaccination campaign done at this point makes no sense. Two, we already have hybrid immunity, like has been pointed out. So I don't see a big value. And three, look at the data from about what's happening in the rest of the world. Really, nothing much is happening. Four, I'm coming to you from Singapore. The whole day I've been traveling around in Singapore, and I can tell you nobody is wearing a mask. Nobody is worrying about all of this. And the Singapore government has been conspicuously silent about it because they don't want any unnecessary panic. I'm not saying we should be running around willy-nilly spreading the virus. But the opposite should not be that, we go into hibernation and call it quits and say, let's get ready for a lockdown. I think some kind of middle ground is good. Like Dr. Thakur said, take your own safety in your own hands. If you're a person with poor immunity, stay home, wear a mask, don't get into unnecessary trouble at this point of time. I don't know if the vaccine is a game changer. I am not for it. We don't have any new vaccines. Remember that. All the vaccines are the old vaccines. So whether it will be a great fit for the current strain, not likely. Whether it will give you any additional clicks out of it, unlikely. What would help is probably better availability of antivirals, especially for those who are symptomatic, to get them better faster, to reduce the risk of long COVID, and also for those who are vulnerable, who may have the risk of progression to severe disease.
So therefore, in conclusion, Doctor, am I right? A, don't panic. B, if you develop the symptoms, take all the necessary precautions, particularly if you're in vulnerable groups like the elderly. But for now, am I right in saying, and this is my final FAQ, is COVID simply just like another flu? We should treat it just like another flu without sort of harking back to what happened a couple of years ago and panicking about it.
Don't leave the shadow behind. For the simple reason, don't take it lightly. This virus can anytime come back and give you trouble if you allow it to. So if you allow it to live by and you allow it to die on its own, you'll be okay. But you have to have the precautions. If you have tested positive, stay away for 2 days. Don't go into crowded offices and look after the elderly people and keep them isolated from you. Don't take any flu lightly. Leave alone this COVID flu because it is still the adjective COVID attached to it.
But don't change the way your lifestyle. We don't have to necessarily change your lifestyle in terms of the manner in which we had to do a few years ago? Because the very word COVID brings in words like social distancing, lockdowns, stay at home. You're saying you don't have to change your lifestyle anymore.
Live normally, live carefully.
Live normally, live carefully is the message here from Dr. Thakkar. And I think that is the general message that Dr. Swaminathan also gave. And I think, therefore, that maybe for once we can hope that the worst certainly is over. The C word need not always lead to the P word, i.e. panic. Dr. Swaminathan, Dr. Thakkar, for joining me here today. Thank you very much. Let's turn to our good news today story of the day. It's about Mangala Awale, a 65-year-old woman from Maharashtra who's breaking stereotypes and inspiring many by driving a passenger rickshaw despite her age and health challenges. She is an inspiration. Take a look why.
Mangala Awale is quite a driven woman. What else would explain Mangala picking up a completely new job at the age of 65? She started driving an auto rickshaw in Nandgaon, a small town in Maharashtra's Satara district, just a few days ago.
छान वाटतंय म्हणते ती, बसणारी सुद्धा खुश असते ती, चांगला आहे म्हणते ती. एक प्रश्न विचारते ती, आता शिकून तुम्ही काय करणार? तुम्ही काय नोकरी करणार आहे का?
Mangala's husband passed away long time ago. She raised her son and 3 daughters working as a laborer. While her daughters are married and son is employed as a driver with the State Transport Corporation, Mangala did not want to be a burden on them.
जब माँ रिक्शा चला के आती है और जो कितना भी 100, 200, 150 रुपए या 500 रुपए जो भी लाती है, तभी उनको अच्छा लगता है कि मेरे लड़के ने ये पैसा नहीं मुझे दिया, मेरे बहू ने मुझे पैसा नहीं दिया, मैं खुद कमा के लाई हूँ.
Commuters say Mangala is an inspiration for them.
दादी माँ बहुत अच्छी गाड़ी चला रही है और हमें महिलाओं में ऐसी उम्मीद रखनी चाहिए कि कौन से भी उम्र में हमें जब नया सीखने को मिले तो अब डरने का नहीं अभी.
Mangala is in the field from 9 in the morning till 6 in the evening. After deducting expenses, she earns 500 to 700 rupees every day. Fitzaklen Mulani, Bureau Report, India Today.
Lovely, lovely story out there. And that's what makes India different. That's what we hope makes the news today different. As I said at the very outset of this show, I had assured you I would make a major personal announcement today. So let me say it and say it loud and clear. I turned 60, 3 days ago. It's normally the age for retirement. But newsmen never really retire. My commitment to the news in 2025 is the same that it was when I joined this profession that I treat as a passion and a journey 37 years ago in 1988. For the last 11 years, I have been with you here on India Today every night at 9 p.m. We have built, hopefully, a relationship based on trust. I hope to continue that special relationship with just one motto: news without the noise, sense not sensation, credibility not chaos. What can I say? Thank you for your love, loyalty, and for watching the show, which is the #1 primetime show in English news channels. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Before that, let me leave you with our image of the day. Omar Abdullah making a point by cycling in Pahalgam. We hope one day, sooner or later, the tourists will also come back to beautiful Pahalgam. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, good luck. Namaskar.